Hello everybody, Justin from Playing Board Games here, and today I have the 5 strongest Dunwich Legacy cards as voted by our community. If you don't know, I've been doing this for a few expansion cycles now, which you can find a link to all the previous ones down in the video description. And what I do is I post a little Google form for all of our community members and say, hey, you should put down here what you think are the 3 strongest cards from this expansion cycle. They can be any sort of player cards, they can be investigator cards, they can be investigator signatures, they can be just regular old player cards, you know, like a freaking, you know, shortcut or something like that, right? And what I do then is I use my little fancy computer, I tabulate all of the results, and then I give a top 5 for all of this. Notably as well, I also actually have a form for the next one, which is going to be Circle Undone, coming up for this next one here. So if you want to get involved in that, you can go down into the YouTube description and find that survey now if you want to fill in and get involved for the next one, which should be coming out in a month or so. But other than that, I think my spiel's all here. I'm going to look through all these cards, talk about why I think they might be voted this way, how I feel about them, yada, yada, yada. So I think we just dive in and start with our first one here, which is Double or Nothing, which received 20 of 95 votes. This is a rogue skill that commits for a wild. It's a fortune, and it's also was once the only forbidden card on the taboo list that has since changed in the most recent taboo. But for the longest time, Double or Nothing, if you were playing with the taboo list, just didn't exist. It is max 1 committed per skill test, and you double the difficulty of this skill test, and if it's successful, you resolve the effects of the successful test twice. So, for example, if you were investigating a location, and you commit this, and you passed, you would get 2 clues, essentially turning it into a deduction. If you were fighting an enemy with a gun, and you dealt 2 damage and were successful, you would deal 4 damage. Things get a little bit more complicated with Double or Nothing when you start to stack other effects with it. So let's just say you're investigating again. You succeed, but you commit a deduction. So now you get 2 clues, 1 from the basic investigate, 1 from the Double or Nothing bonus. But then you get 1 from the deduction and then 1 from the deduction Double or Nothing bonus. So you're getting 4 clues. That, in and of itself, is not actually too broken, right? It's powerful, but it's not too broken. Then you can go to the gun example. You commit a vicious blow. Now you're dealing 2 damage from the gun base, 2 from the Double or Nothing bonus, 1 from the vicious blow, 1 from the Double or Nothing vicious blow bonus. So now, you know, you're dealing 6 damage. But what if we threw an overpower in there too, right? So now you're dealing 6 damage, you're drawing 2 cards. But what if we also threw some other things in there too, right? Like, what if someone else was playing this and your teammate threw a leadership on this, and now, I don't know, you were getting 4 resources and they were getting 4 resources. So Double or Nothing had this problem where everything that was added to it compounded to make this card just that much better. And at a certain point, the designers were like, we don't know how to balance this to make this work, because going forward, all card effects, all skills, all everything are going to depend on Double or Nothing. And I think we even saw examples of why this card was better to just be forbidden when we started to get effects that allow you to test at 0. Because I'm not great at math, but I do know that if you double 0, you still get 0. But you can still get all the other effects. So an example of this is a card that just came out called Grift. It came out in Feast of Hemlock Vale. That's a 0 test. So now, let's say you succeed by 6, you get, what is it, 5 to 10 resources? You get 5 resources. I think you can get 6 max for Grift. You can get 12 resources. You commit a Nimble on there. You can move 6 times, right? You have the other things. You commit a all in, you draw 10. Parallel Skids does similar things as well. And it just shows of why ultimately it was for the better that Double or Nothing did get removed. I think Double or Nothing is fun if you play it fairly, but it's capital B, you know what, capital R, capital O, capital K, capital E, and capital N broken if you just try to break it in some way. And I think that ultimately I'm not surprised to hear it in the strongest cards here with 20 of the votes. It was just on the fringe of the top 5. I'm going to wager that a lot of people have never even played with this card, so that may be why it didn't get on most other lists. I think ultimately it's probably the strongest card from Dunwich Legacy just because of what it represents and how the fact that, like, maybe if this was released with 5 experience, it would live in the game today. But this card was just so hard to balance around that I think it was just inevitable that it fell into this place here and received number 5 with 20 votes. Next up, we got Higher Education. This is a 3 experience Seeker permanent talent. While you have 5 or more cards in your hand, Higher Education gains Lightning Bolt. Spend 1 resource, you get +2 Brain for this skill test. Or Lightning Bolt, spend 1 resource, you get +2 Book for this skill test. Like Double or Nothing, this received 20 of the 95 votes that we had from people. So, this card is very good. When this card came out, it was kind of wild. There was a combo with before any taboos hit, because this card was tabooed, but then was not tabooed. It's currently not on the taboo list, where Rex Murphy could use Dr. Milan to investigate, succeed by 2, get a clue, spend that get a clue and a resource, spend that resource to do it again with Higher Education. So it was just like one of those things where you were constantly investigating at probably 8 or 9 without actually spending any resources and getting 2 clues for each of those investigate actions. It was kind of just absurd. And it's one of those things where people now say that Rex Murphy without his taboo list is fine. I still think Rex Murphy without his taboo list is the strongest clue-getting investigator in the game. It's just that without his taboo and without this Higher Education stuff and without the Dr. Milan Christopher loop, he is not broken. He doesn't just, like, destroy the game in one turn, right? Where, for example, like, a 6-shroud location, sorry, a 6-clue location, regular Rex Murphy, like how he is now tabooed, will get those clues in 2 turns. In Untabooed is going to get it in 1, which people might say is S tier, but it's actually like 8 tiers above it. Higher Education, beyond that now in its current form, is still a very powerful permanent card. It's very easy to have 5 cards in hand. This was in the earlier days of ARKHAM, when in theory it wasn't as possible to have 5 cards in hand. As we know from when Dunwich Legacy first came out, having 5 cards in hand actually was pretty easy to do even back then. But it is somehow even easier today. Card draw, card selection, just like resource management has become easier to do in Arkham Horror with a full collection. So Higher Education is kind of just passively always on for the investigators that want to do it. And there are still a lot of investigators that want to take advantage of Higher Education. I've known people that bring it out in Agatha Crane, in Kate Winthrop, 2 very recent investigators in terms of the release of the card pool. And it is still just entirely relevant. As I mentioned, it was tabooed to be higher experience. I think at one point it was 8 XP, which I think at the time was very good for just fitting the balance for the card. It wasn't as ubiquitous, but I think now Higher Education is still played at 3, but I think 3 feels right because of just generally there are better things to, not better things to do with your experience, but there are other things to do with your experience that are equally as strong as Higher Education. Higher Education is like a boring way to spend 3 XP that just is efficiently getting the job done, and trust me, I love boring things that just get the job done, but I think that ultimately now the card pool has grown, that 3 XP can go a long way, and also at that point as well, resources can kind of go a much better way than just being +2 to a test. I actually, funnily enough, see Higher Education more commonly brought to the table to use defensively as opposed to offensively, because it's just so much easier to get your book to a good number that you don't really need to be using that part of Higher Education, but people like it for the defensive part, which I think is a true testament to how nice Higher Education actually is, because having the ability to switch between offensive through clue getting or defensive through not dying to the Mythos phase is a really nice option to explore. I think this card makes sense in the top 5, and I think it's a very, very powerful card. On to our next one we have here, which is Pathfinder. It was a crazy time to be a Seeker when Dunwich Legacy came out. 3 cost, 1 experience. Chained, +1 experience if you're playing with a taboo list. It's a talent. As a lightning bolt during your turn, if you are not engaged with any enemies, exhaust Pathfinder, move to a connecting location. This received 25 of 95 votes. Some slight spoilers I'm going to say here. Shortcut received 19 votes. Shortcut 0. It was just on the cusp of making it into this video, just was a little bit short. But as you can see, Seekers received a lot of really good movement in this one, which when you couple it with everything else we talked about with Rex Murphy and all that, it's kind of nutters, isn't it? That like you could just spend more time getting clues. Pathfinder is still played today in the full Legacy environment. I think that's kind of the thing that you kind of look for these cards. Are they still played today? And the answer to most of these cards that we're going to see here, I mean, technically all of them except for Double or Nothing, the answer is yes, these cards are played today. So why is Pathfinder so good? Why is it so strong? And the reason for that is that any sort of action compression you can have, especially when you have action compression on movement, feels better. I subscribe to the belief that any sort of action compression is good. So, like, if I'm getting a clue by investigating a location, and then, like, using Pathfinder to not spend that action that I used to investigate to get the clue, that's good, right? But it's like the same thing as if I just got my clue more efficiently, if like that, instead of sending that action that I would have got that clue, if I was able to double up my clues and then I move, it's the same sort of thing. However, it kind of compounds, right? Where if you add all of these things together, so in addition to that compression, you have Pathfinder to help you move, it all just kind of sings. But really, Pathfinder is a very simple card. It's just movement compression. Very fun as well when someone is also playing with a safeguard here to just, like, make sure that, like, you're just saving actions as a team. It's, like, very, very fun to sort of do that thing. Because ultimately, while the movement action is the most necessary action, it's the action that, to a lot of players, feels like the action that you hate taking, right? People rather will play Pathfinder in order to take basic draw or resource actions. And I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm not saying this is wrong or that this is bad or it's like a mistake to do this, right? So bear that in mind. But like that's how bad taking a move action feels. People would rather just use Pathfinder to save on those actions, to like not move and just do basic action like resource actions instead. And I think that's ultimately fine and shows to the testament of what Pathfinder is able to do. I think Pathfinder is at its peak when you're coupling it with other things and using it to just like move and save on investigates. Rex Murphy, Amanda Sharp are two great users of Pathfinder. Ursula Downs obviously is very good with Pathfinder because it triggers her ability. It's a lightning bolt free activation of her ability. It kind of allows her to do a Rex impression, so to speak. Monterey Jack allows it to trigger his ability. There's a lot, he's in the art for heaven's sake, like, you know, it's got to be good with him. But I think there's a lot of reasons why. Just like compressing all that movement is a really good way of just winning the game quicker. Winning the game quicker means less enemies, less treacheries, less chance of dying. It means you're able to squeeze out more VP. It's just a combination of all these things. It doesn't do anything super flashy or exciting, but it just saves you a lot of time and lets you ignore doing the action that you probably hate doing more than you think. All right, next one we got here is Charisma with 31 of 95 votes. This is a 3 experience neutral asset. It's permanent and you have 1 additional ally slot. I'm going to be real with everyone. This was the only one on the list that I was actually shocked made it in the top 5. I think a big reason for this is that I think that ultimately, while allies are still strong, I think allies, for the most part, have kind of just stagnated in their power level. I think there's still some very good allies, but I think at this point now, the allies that are good, you want just one of. You don't really need to do stacking allies. And a big thing for me personally, in order to be one of the strongest cards from a cycle for myself, you kind of need to be ubiquitous. So that's why, for example, like Shortcut is one that I view really well, like a level 0 card that kind of I can just play and just get it done. Delve Too Deep is another one that I think is just like really, really good. And that's like another one that would probably have made the cut for me over Charisma. But I'm not I don't think this is wrong to be in the top 5. It's just the one that I personally wouldn't have put in there. So let's then answer the question of why Charisma is so strong. And I think a big reason for this is that it allows players to do more allies. This, I think, is very interesting from when you look at it in the perspective of Dunwich Legacy. This is now included in the revised core, so everyone has it. This was a great addition to the revised core set. But when this came out in Dunwich Legacy, allies were probably the strongest card in the game. Like, they were just like, you wanted more of them. And I think that that makes sense for why Charisma was so good back in the day. While we always would play Charisma, Dunwich Legacy itself brought in additional allies through the story cards that you wanted to include in your deck because they were also very good and helped you get the job done quicker or more efficiently. And I think that that makes sense for back then. It's just now people like playing allies. Allies are still very powerful. There's still a lot of good ones, and doubling up on allies can be a very good way to win the game. As I mentioned, I don't necessarily play with that style, so that's why that doesn't fit here. But like an example, in Seeker's a bad example because they have the Miskatonic Archaeology funding, but like in Rogue, let's just say, or Survivor, Rogue, a lot of players will, I've seen when they do flex decks, will play both Lola Santiago and Delilah O'Rourke, or Delilah O'Rourke, Lonnie Ritter, or Robert Carlyle. The name slipped my mind for some reason. Probably because he's still very new. But like you can like double up on all of these things. Leo Anderson from the Forgotten Age, he wants to have all these allies in play. In Survivor, a common combination is Jessica Hyde and Peter Sylvestre to just never die. So there's a lot of reasons for why Charisma exists and why you would play it. And that's why it received 31 of the 95 votes. I'll scroll through once I'm going through the last card to see if there's any comments about Charisma to get some other perspectives, because as I mentioned, this is the one that kind of surprised me the most. Let's go to number 1, and I don't think this should be a surprise for what's left. It's Peter Sylvestre, big man on campus, 3 cost, 2 experience, received 58 of 95 votes. So more than half of the votes went to Peter Sylvestre here, like of the voters, they included him in theirs. He is a 1/3 soak ally in the Survivor class. You get +1 foot and +1 brain. As a reaction after your turn ends, heal 1 horror from Peter Sylvestre. So as I mentioned, allies in the early game were strong. In the core set, we got Beat Cop and Dr. Milan Christopher and Arcane Initiate. I think that's her name. She's just the one that dies. But like those were all very strong allies that existed in the core set. These guys all gave, like Dr. Milan Christopher and Beat Cop strong, gave +1 to a stat. Peter Sylvestre then came in the next cycle and he said, you know what, hold my beer. I'm going to give you 2 defensive stats and I'm also going to make you never die. At the time that this card came out, it was crazy. This guy just brings so much survivability and so much defensive potential to you as a player that it's kind of hard to lose the game by damage or horror. You can still lose by dooming out. Very possible. But with Peter Sylvestre in play, your defensive capabilities have kind of just become utterly insane, right? And it turns out that even with a full collection, this guy is still just as good as he was back then. Most allies that give you 2 stats, and even though these are both defensive stats, each ally that gives you 2 stats cost a lot of experience, or cost more resources, or have other things associated with them. I think the other ally that I can think of off the top of my head, there's probably more. Whittingreen, I think she's 2 experience, but she costs 4, right? I think that there's like this balance where, and she also doesn't give it to you all the time. You have to have something else. It's very easy to have that with Whitten, but it's a conditional 2 stats. Peter Sylvestre just says, brother, I got these 2 stats for you. I'm going to give them to you, and you're going to love having them. And then it capped on to the thing where, like, realistically, even if Peter Sylvestre didn't give stats, or he only gave 1 stats, his reaction ability is utterly insane. It's just like a perfect storm of an ally that has just, since Dunwich Legacy, has been good and has not gotten worse. Like, there are good allies in the Survivor class that are competitive with Peter Sylvestre, Granny Orn, Jessica Hyde if you're a fighter. But as I mentioned with Charisma on the last slide here, play Jessica Hyde and Peter Sylvester, even if you're not fighting or evading or using your brain, just because you can choose to never die. Obviously, it's better if you do those things, but it just shows the power that Peter Sylvester has in form of survivability, which is just what's really impressive about him as a card. Okay. Other cards that were close to making the cut. Deduction 2 got 12 votes. Delve Too Deep got 13. Prepared for the Worst got 10. Rex Murphy got 18. As I mentioned, Shortcut got 19. And Strange Solution Acidic Ichor got 10. Just going through some comments here. Yeah, Charisma is great early in the game because it gets extra boosts. Yeah, I agree. So I mentioned that. This person voted for Charisma, Pete, and Double or Nothing. So, yep, made it to the top 5. Double or Nothing gets a nod for number 1 because it's for real. And a lot of people are saying that. I feel like Pete had been the only ally for the entire Survivor class for so long. A self-healing card with an insane upside of giving you stat boosts. It is true. He was kind of like the ally you just ran in. You just played. Even when Jessica Hyde came out, she came out in Dream Eaters. I think the Investigator starter decks came first. I think the first like competitive Survivor ally was... I mean, like, people played Madame Lebranche, but I don't think she was competitive for Peter Sylvester. I think it was Granny Orrin was, like, the first one that I think was competitive that I can think of off the top of my head. Someone said Laboratory Assistant, and they said it might be controversial, but I love it. I think Laboratory Assistant is very strong, and I think even underappreciated in terms of the power, so I definitely agree with your statement there. I did like the people who said Jewel of Aureolus and Stand Together 3. They're very strong economy cards. Jewel of Aureolus, of course, only with the taboo, so there is keeping that in mind. But I play Stand Together 3 all the time now. And I think it's also, I've leaned on the patrons enough. In patron game days, a lot of people bring Stand Together 3, and it always feels great when someone plays it. Someone said, let's be honest, the second most powerful Dunwich card is the second copy of Peach you put in your deck. I love the spice. I love the spice on that one. Peter Sylvester's been king of the ally slot since day 1, and that hasn't really changed. That's very true as well. He is very good. Lone Wolf a vote as well is very interesting. I think Lone Wolf's a good card if you have like a smaller economy or if you're playing with less players. I think it's a very strong card as well. Well, people say, like, there's a lot of people who say Pathfinder also say Shortcut, which I think is very interesting. Obviously not as many. This is a great thing. I'd like to see the discussion how current is going to affect Dunwich cards. Some of these are truly iconic because they may as well be core. I think the conversation is less about how current's going to affect Dunwich, because as we know, current is not going to be in Dunwich, most likely. They haven't finalized on it. It's still beta, but like it's enough for us to do playtesting and theory crafting with it. But I do think that it's going to be interesting to see how these classes work without these cards when you do play current in that format. I don't know why you think the Dunwich card pool is weak, Justin. Well, it's because there are some strong cards, but there's also a lot of bad cards. People remember, it's like when you go like, man, movies from the 70s were really good, and then you forget like the movies that don't become memorable and are just kind of there taking up space and like taking up mass in the culture, and you just like kind of just give them a pass because you forgot about them. The same thing happens with Dunwich. You'll look through at some of these Survivor cards and be like, what the hell? What's this? You know? So it's one of those things. I mean, I think it's a good card pool, but it has a lot of stinkers. The title of this video could be 5 best secret cards and would be pretty accurate. It is true. It is true, but I mean, a secret card did not win number 1. That was our good boy Peter Sylvester. Okay! That's the bottom of all those things here. That's fun. I always like doing these. I like getting other perspectives on all this sort of stuff. So as I mentioned, there is a link down in the video description to do the one for Circle Undone. You can do that now. 3 cards for Circle Undone. And I'll be coming back to this in a month or so. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. I really appreciate you helping me make this video. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Have a good one. And as always, a GG's.